What's up? What's up? What's up? How are you feeling right now? I said, how are you feeling right now? Because today is not a normal day. Toe day is an interruption to the patterns, excuses, and half-finished goals that have been running your life on autopilot. Let me ask you something real. How many times have you started a year fired up and ended it wondering where your motivation went? How many goals did you set with absolute certainty, only to watch old habits quietly take over? If you've ever felt frustrated with yourself, overwhelmed by inconsistency, or tired of knowing you're capable of more but not living it, you're not broken. You're just running an old pattern. And today, we're here to break it. Because today's topic is simple, direct, and life-altering. How to achieve your goals in 2026. Not by wishing, not by hoping, not by setting goals and forgetting them by February. I'm not here to motivate you. I'm not here to hype you up for 10 minutes and leave you the same person. I'm here to help you make a decision that alters your identity. The kind of decision that makes 2026 inevitable. Right now, there are two versions of you in this room. The one you've been practicing every day without realizing it, and the one you're capable of becoming. And here's the truth, most people never confront. Your life is not the result of your intentions. It is the result of your standards, your belief systems, and the actions you repeat when no one is watching. If you stay with me till the end of this message, you're not just going to understand why goals fail, you're going to feel what it's like to take control again, to master your emotions, to rewire your beliefs, to build momentum that doesn't depend on motivation. Because if nothing changes today, nothing changes in 2026. And if you don't take control of your identity, your fear, your habits, and your focus, life will decide for you. This is not information, this is intervention. So I want you locked in. I want you present. I want you honest enough to admit where you are and bold enough to decide who you're done being. Because the moment you change the meaning of your fear, the moment you take responsibility for your state, the moment you decide to act without certainty, everything changes. And it starts with one truth most people never fully accept. Fear is not stopping you. It's pointing directly to the life you're meant to live. Decide who you are, not what you want, because what you want can change. But who you decide to be will shape every choice you make when motivation disappears. Most people spend their lives chasing outcomes, setting goals, writing lists, visualizing results, and then wondering why they keep ending up in the same place year after year. It's because goals don't run your life. Identity does. When pressure hits, when emotions rise, when fear shows up, you don't rise to your goals. You fall to the level of who you believe you are. Right now, whether you realize it or not, you already have an identity. You have rules about who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve, and what's realistic for someone like you. Those rules are running your nervous system. They dictate what you tolerate, what you avoid, and what you never even attempt. And here's the brutal truth. If you don't consciously decide who you are, your past will decide for you. Identity is not something you discover. It's something you decide and then reinforce with action. Strongest people on the planet don't wait to feel confident before they act. They act and confidence follows. They don't wait to feel certain before they move. And certainty is built through experience. Emotion follows motion, not the other way around. Most people say, once I achieve this, then I'll believe in myself. That's backwards. The world doesn't reward potential. It rewards identity in motion. You don't become disciplined after you succeed. You succeed because you decided, I am disciplined. And then you behaved in alignment with that decision even when it was uncomfortable. Your brain is constantly asking one question, who am I being right now? And it will always seek consistency with that answer. If you see yourself as someone who quits when it gets hard, your nervous system will find reasons to stop. If you see yourself as someone who finishes what they start, your body will push through fatigue. Identity shapes perception. Perception shapes emotion. Emotion drives action. This is why willpower alone never works. Willpower is finite. Identity is infinite. When something is who you are, it no longer feels like sacrifice. It feels like alignment. You don't debate it. You don't negotiate with it. You execute. The moment you decide who you are, you collapse time. You stop waiting for permission. You stop outsourcing belief to results. You stop asking, can I? And start declaring, this is who I am, and this is what people like me do. Beliefs are nothing more than emotionalized convictions reinforced by repetition. You didn't wake up one day with the beliefs you have now. You practiced them, you rehearsed them, you stacked evidence for them. And the same process works in reverse. When you make a new identity decision and back it up with action, your brain starts collecting evidence immediately. Every small win becomes proof. Every follow-through strengthens the loop. Here's what most people miss. Your identity is not built in your best moments. It's built in your worst ones. It's built when you don't feel like it, when no one is watching, when excuses would make sense. That's when the identity either collapses or solidifies. Emotional mastery starts here, because once you decide who you are, emotions become signals, not commands. Fear doesn't control you, it informs you. Resistance doesn't stop you, it strengthens you. Discomfort no longer means danger, it means growth. You stop asking, how do I feel, and start asking, what does the person I've decided to be do next? The strongest identity decisions are non-negotiable. They're not dependent on mood, weather, or circumstances. They are standards, and standards shape destiny. You don't rise to your expectations. You fall to your standards every single time. If you decide, I am the kind of person who keeps promises to myself, your behavior changes immediately. If you decide, I am someone who takes responsibility no matter what, excuses lose their power. If you decide, I am a leader in my own life, you stop waiting for external validation. Decisive action is the ultimate identity reinforcer. Thinking doesn't change identity. Talking doesn't change identity. Action does. Especially action taken when it's inconvenient. Every time you act in alignment with who you've decided to be, you send a signal to your nervous system. This is real. This is safe. This is who we are now. And understand this. Identity is not about arrogance. It's about ownership. It's about choosing to live from intention instead of reaction. When you don't decide who you are, life decides for you. Other people's expectations shape you. Past failures define you. Old emotional patterns trap you. But the moment you decide, truly decide, there is a shift. Your posture changes, your voice changes, your focus changes, you stop asking for permission to become the next version of yourself. You embody it now. You don't wait for the new year. You don't wait for confidence. You don't wait for clarity. You decide, and then you move. Because the fastest way to change your life is not to change your goals. It's to change the meaning of who you are and prove it with action. End the old year emotionally before you start the new one, because you cannot step into a powerful future while your nervous system is still living in the past. Most people think time moves them forward automatically. It doesn't. Time passes, but emotion stays stored until it's resolved. And unresolved emotion becomes invisible weight. It shapes your decisions, drains your energy, and quietly sabotages your confidence without you even realizing it. You don't begin a new chapter by turning the page. You begin it by closing the last one. And most people never do. They carry disappointments, unfinished goals, broken expectations, and self-judgment from the previous year straight into the next one. Then they wonder why the same patterns repeat. It's not bad luck. It's emotional inertia. Your brain is designed to protect you, not empower you. If last year involved pain, failure, or disappointment, your nervous system remembers. It associates similar goals with threat. So even when you consciously say, this year will be different, your body hesitates, your energy pulls back, your focus scatters. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. Emotional endings are not about erasing the past. They are about reclaiming your power from it. When you don't consciously end an experience, it keeps running in the background like an open app draining your battery. It shows up as self-doubt, as hesitation, as a subtle belief that says, what's the point? I tried before. Most people don't fail because they lack discipline. They fail because they're still emotionally negotiating with yesterday. You cannot build a compelling future with unresolved emotional debt. The mind needs closure to create clarity. Without it, every new decision feels heavier than it should. Ending the year emotionally means making a clean break with the identity you no longer need. The version of you who tried and fell short. The version of you who stayed too long in something that wasn't working. The version of you who played small to stay safe. That version did the best it could with the tools it had. But it does not get to lead anymore. Here's the shift. You don't end the year by reviewing what went wrong. You end it by deciding what no longer gets emotional real estate in your mind. Resentment, regret, guilt, self-blame. Those are not lessons. Those are anchors. Lessons empower, anchors sink you. When you emotionally close a year, you change the meaning of it. And meaning controls emotion. Emotion controls action. Action shapes results. Change the meaning and behavior follows naturally. Most people skip this step because it's uncomfortable. They want motivation, not reflection. They want momentum, not responsibility. But power comes from facing reality and choosing a new interpretation. The past only controls you if you keep agreeing with its story. Ending emotionally means you stop using last year as evidence of what's possible. You stop saying, "This always happens to me." You stop letting old outcomes define new standards. You recognize that the past was feedback, not a verdict. There is a massive difference between learning and reliving. Learning strengthens you, reliving weakens you. One gives you wisdom. The other keeps you stuck in emotional loops that feel familiar but cost you your future. Your nervous system needs a signal that the chapter is closed, not intellectually, emotionally. That signal comes from decision and symbolic action. When you decide that year is complete, your physiology shifts, your breathing changes, your posture changes, your focus changes. You reclaim energy that was trapped in rumination and redirect it toward creation. When you don't end the year emotionally, you start the new one crowded. Crowded with expectations, crowded with fear, crowded with unfinished emotional business, and crowded minds don't create bold lives. This is why people sabotage new beginnings. They say they want change, but part of them is still loyal to the old story. Loyalty to pain feels safer than the uncertainty of growth. Familiar suffering feels predictable. New possibility feels risky. Ending emotionally is choosing growth over familiarity. Emotional mastery begins with ownership, not blame ownership. You don't blame yourself for the past, but you take responsibility for releasing it. Responsibility is power. Victimhood is paralysis. The moment you say, that chapter is complete, you move from reaction to creation. Ending emotionally also means forgiving yourself for being human, for not knowing then what. You know now, for making decisions from fear, not certainty. Forgiveness is not approval, it's release, and release creates space. Space creates clarity. Clarity fuels momentum. When you carry unfinished emotion, every new goal feels heavier. When you release it, energy returns, focus sharpens, confidence rebuilds. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you stop dragging unnecessary weight. This process is not passive, it's decisive. It's saying, I extract the lesson and I leave the pain. I keep the wisdom. I drop the story. I honor the effort. I release the judgment. Ending emotionally is an identity shift. It's moving from this happened to me to this prepared me. From I failed to I learned. From I'm behind to I'm ready. Once you do this, something powerful happens. The future stops feeling intimidating. It starts feeling available. Your goals no longer trigger resistance. They trigger curiosity. Your body is no longer bracing for disappointment. It's open to possibility. You cannot build a new identity on top of unresolved emotion. You must clear the foundation. Strong structures require clean ground. Emotional clutter weakens execution. Emotional clarity accelerates it. Ending the old year emotionally is not a ritual for closure. It's a strategy for performance. It's how you reset your nervous system, reclaim your focus, and step into the next phase of your life with presence instead of pressure. When the past no longer has emotional charge, it loses control. And when it loses control, your attention returns to where your power has always been. The present moment, where decisions are made and lives are changed. Raise your standards or lower your life, because life will never rise to meet your hopes, your wishes, or your intentions. It will always fall to the level of what you tolerate, not what you say you want, not what you visualize. What you tolerate emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually becomes the invisible boundary of your results. Most people don't have a goal problem. They have a standards problem. They know what they want. But they've unconsciously decided what they're willing to live with. And whatever you're willing to live with, you'll keep getting more of. Standards are the rules you live by when no one is watching. They're the line you refuse to cross, and the line you refuse to live below. Here's the hard truth. Every area of your life is producing results that perfectly match your current standards. Your relationships, your health, your income, your focus, your energy. If something hasn't changed, it's because at some level you've decided it's acceptable. Not consciously, emotionally. People don't change when they see the light. They change when they feel the heat, when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. Standards shift instantly. That's why some people transform overnight after years of struggle. It's not luck, it's leverage. They hit a threshold where enough is enough was no longer a phrase. It was a decision. Standards are not about pressure. They're about identity. When you raise your standards, you're not saying, I hope I can do better. You're saying, this is who I am now. And once that identity locks in, behavior follows automatically. You don't need motivation to live up to your standards. You feel discomfort when you violate them. Think about it. You don't negotiate brushing your teeth. You don't debate certain behaviors. Why? Because your standard is non-negotiable. It's part of who you are. The same principle applies to excellence, discipline, honesty, focus, and leadership. When they become standards, not goals, most people lower their standards without realizing it. They call it being realistic, they call it being patient, they call it protecting their peace. But what they're really doing is avoiding short-term discomfort at the cost of long-term fulfillment. Comfort today becomes regret tomorrow. Your standards are shaped by what you repeatedly accept. Miscommitments, broken promises to yourself, staying quiet when you should speak up, settling when you know you're capable of more. Every time you tolerate something that contradicts your values, you reinforce an identity that says, this is okay. And your life responds accordingly. Raising your standards starts with one brutal question. What have I been tolerating that I need to end immediately? Not someday, not gradually, immediately. Standards only work when they are clear and enforced. Vague standards produce vague lives. When you raise your standards, your environment will test you, people will question you, old patterns will resist, your nervous system will react because certainty feels threatened. But that resistance is proof that change is happening. Growth always challenges comfort. High standards are not about perfection, they're about consistency. They're about deciding that certain behaviors are no longer an option. Not because you're punishing yourself, but because you respect yourself too much to live below your potential. Most people confuse standards with expectations. Expectations are hopes. Standards are requirements. Expectations say, I'd like this to happen. Standards say, this must happen, and I will find a way. Expectations are emotional wishes. Standards are behavioral commitments. Look at anyone who has sustained success, not a lucky break, sustained excellence. You'll find one thing in common. They operate from uncompromising standards. Standards for preparation, standards for integrity, standards for how they show up when no one is applauding. And here's the key. Standards are not enforced by willpower. They're enforced by pain and pleasure. You must associate massive pain with violating your standards and massive pleasure with living by them. The brain moves away from pain and toward pleasure. That's the code. If breaking a promise to yourself feels normal, nothing changes. If it feels unacceptable, behavior shifts immediately. Emotional leverage drives transformation. That's how habits change. That's how lives change. Raising your standards means you stop negotiating with your weakest emotions. You stop asking, do I feel like it? And start asking, what is required? Leaders don't wait for the right mood. They act from principle, from values, from standards. When standards rise, excuses fall away. Not because life gets easier, but because your identity gets stronger. You no longer argue with yourself. You execute. Decision fatigue disappears when standards are clear. There's nothing to debate. This is where confidence actually comes from, not from success first, but from self-trust. Every time you live up to your standards, you reinforce the belief, I can count on myself. That belief becomes unshakable confidence. And confidence changes how you speak, how you move, how you decide. Lower standards create chaos. You're constantly restarting, recommitting, apologizing to yourself. High standards create order. Order creates momentum. Momentum creates results. Raising your standards doesn't mean doing more. It means accepting less of what drains you. Less distraction, less dishonesty, less inconsistency, less self-betrayal. You make room for excellence by removing tolerance for mediocrity. And understand this, the moment you raise your standards, your life will demand that you become more disciplined, more focused, more courageous. That's not a burden. That's the invitation. Life always expands to meet the level of responsibility you're willing to carry. If you want a different life, you don't need a new personality. You need new standards. Standards that say this is no longer acceptable. Standards that say this is how I show up. Standards that don't depend on circumstances. Because the quality of your life will never exceed the quality of the standards you enforce daily. Turn goals into systems or watch them die. because goals without structure are nothing more than emotional intentions. They feel good when you set them. They excite you when you talk about them, and they disappear the moment life applies pressure. The difference between people who dream and people who deliver is not desire. It's design. Most people think success comes from motivation. It doesn't. Motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with sleep, mood, stress, and circumstance. Systems don't care how you feel. Systems run even when you don't want to. And that's why systems win. A goal is an outcome. A system is a way of living. Outcomes depend on conditions. Systems create conditions. When you build the right system, the goal becomes a byproduct instead of a battle. You stop chasing results and start producing them. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It craves certainty and efficiency. When your actions are vague, your brain resists. When your actions are structured, your brain cooperates. This is neuroscience, not willpower. The brain wants to conserve energy, so it automates whatever you repeat. Systems turn effort into automation. Most goals fail because they ask too much of your conscious mind. Be more disciplined. Work harder. Stay focused. Those are not instructions. They're wishes. The conscious mind gets tired quickly. The subconscious runs your life. Systems are how you program the subconscious. Your goal is to get fit, but there's no scheduled time, no prepared environment, no clear trigger. The system is missing. If your goal is to grow a business, but there's no daily execution window, no feedback loop, no measurement, the system is missing. When systems are missing, inconsistency is guaranteed. People don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because their systems are weak. Weak systems demand constant decision. Making constant decisions drain energy. Drained energy leads to avoidance. Avoidance kills momentum. Strong systems remove decisions. They eliminate debate. They make the right action the default action. When something is scheduled, measured, and ritualized, it no longer depends on mood. It becomes part of your identity. This is why successful people seem disciplined. They're not forcing themselves. They've eliminated friction. They've designed their days to support their outcomes. What looks like willpower from the outside is often just intelligent design on the inside. A system starts with clarity, not vague intention, but specific behavior. Not work on my goals, but every day at 7 a.m., I execute this one action. The brain responds to precision. Ambiguity creates resistance. Clarity creates momentum. The second element of a system is consistency over intensity. Massive effort done sporadically does not rewire the brain. Small actions done daily do. Repetition is what creates identity. Identity is what sustains results. Systems prioritize frequency over perfection. The third element is feedback. Systems must measure something. Not to judge, but to adjust. What gets measured gets improved. Measurement keeps you engaged. It turns progress into something visible, which fuels motivation naturally. When you turn goals into systems, failure becomes information, not emotion. You stop taking setbacks personally. You adjust the system instead of attacking yourself. This is how high performers stay calm under pressure. They don't personalize outcomes. They optimize processes. Most people attach their self-worth to results. Systems detach identity from outcome and attach it to behavior. You win the day by executing the system, not by achieving the goal. This removes emotional volatility and builds long-term confidence. Systems also protect you from burnout. Goals demand constant emotional energy. Systems distribute effort sustainably. They turn growth into a rhythm instead of a sprint. Burnout happens when intensity replaces structure. Here's the real shift. When you live in a system, you stop asking, am I motivated? And start asking, did I follow the system? That question is empowering. It puts control back in your hands. You may not control outcomes, but you always control actions. Systems are also the antidote to fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty. Systems create predictability. When you know exactly what to do next, fear loses its grip. Action becomes mechanical. Momentum builds quietly. People love setting goals because it feels like progress. Systems require commitment, which feels like responsibility. That's why most people avoid them. But responsibility is power. The moment you accept responsibility for your system, you reclaim control over your future. Every identity you admire is supported by invisible systems. Confidence is supported by preparation. Discipline is supported by routine. Creativity is supported by structure. Freedom is supported by order. There is no high performance without systems. When goals die, people blame themselves. The truth is, the goal was never designed to survive. Dreams don't need more belief. They need better architecture. Structure is not restrictive. It's liberating. It frees your mind to focus on what matters. Systems also create trust with yourself. Every time you execute the system, even imperfectly, you reinforce the belief. I follow through. That belief becomes self-confidence. Self-confidence compounds faster than motivation ever could. Turning goals into systems is an identity decision. It's saying, I am someone who builds structures that support my success. It's moving from hope to ownership, from reaction to design, from chaos to clarity. And once systems are in place, something remarkable happens. Progress becomes inevitable. Not dramatic, not flashy, but consistent. And consistency over time always wins. Because the people who win are not the ones who want it most. They're the ones who built a system that makes quitting harder than continuing. Identity drives behavior. Behavior shapes destiny. Because every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you believe you are. You are not controlled by your goals, your circumstances, or your past. You are controlled by the identity you reinforce every single day through what you do when it matters most. Most people think destiny is something that happens to them. It isn't. Destiny is built moment by moment, choice by choice, habit by habit, and those habits don't come from willpower. They come from identity. You act in alignment with who you believe you are, not who you wish you were. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you'll find ways to struggle. If you see yourself as someone who perseveres, you'll find ways to push through. The brain is always seeking consistency. It wants your behavior to match your self-image. When there's a mismatch, the brain will change behavior faster than it changes identity. Unless you intervene. This is why people sabotage success. They reach a new level and suddenly their behavior changes. They procrastinate, they pick fights. They miss deadlines, not because they're lazy, but because their identity hasn't caught up with their results. The nervous system tries to restore what feels familiar. Familiarity feels safe, even if it's limiting. Identity is not just what you say, it's what you expect of yourself. It's the standards you enforce privately. It's the story you repeat when things go wrong. And that story shapes your emotional state. Emotional state determines action. Action determines outcomes. Outcomes reinforce identity. That loop runs your life. To change destiny, you must interrupt the loop. You do that by consciously choosing a new identity and then proving it with behavior. Not once repeatedly. Identity is built through evidence. The brain believes what it sees you do consistently. This is where emotional mastery comes in. Emotions are not obstacles. They are fuel, but only if you are in control. If emotions control you, behavior becomes reactive. If you control emotions, behavior becomes strategic. High performers don't eliminate emotion, they harness it. When you decide who you are, emotions become instructions, not excuses. Fear becomes a signal to prepare, not to retreat. Discomfort becomes a sign of growth. Not danger, fatigue becomes a reminder to recover, not to quit. Most people let emotions define identity. I feel unmotivated, so I must not be disciplined. That's a lie. Emotion is temporary. Identity is a decision. You don't wait to feel strong to act strong, you act strong. And the feeling follows. Behavior is the bridge between identity and destiny. You don't think your way into a new life. You act your way into it. Each action is a micro decision that says, this is who I am. And the brain listens. Small behaviors matter more than big intentions because they happen more often. One disciplined action doesn't change your life. A pattern of disciplined actions does. Patterns become habits. Habits become character. Character becomes destiny. People overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can become in a year. Why? Because identity compounds when behavior aligns with identity daily. Momentum builds quietly. You don't notice it at first. Then one day, everything looks different. Destiny is not a dramatic moment. It's a direction. And direction is set by daily behavior. What you read, what you tolerate, what you avoid, what you finish, what you start. These are not small things. They are votes. If you want a different destiny, don't obsess over the future. Obsess over today's behavior. Today is where identity is reinforced. Today is where destiny is shaped. Tomorrow is just a result of what you practice. Now, most people wait for clarity before they act. Action creates clarity, movement creates belief. Proof beats hope every time. The fastest way to change how you feel about yourself is to do something that requires courage. Courageous action rewires identity. Your nervous system responds to repetition and intensity. When you repeatedly act in alignment with a new identity, even when it's uncomfortable, the nervous system adapts. What once felt hard becomes normal. What once felt scary becomes familiar. That's how transformation happens. Behavior also shapes your environment. When you act differently, people respond differently. Opportunities appear. Feedback changes. Your world reflects your identity back to you. That reflection reinforces belief. The loop strengthens. This is why environment matters, but identity matters more. A strong identity can override a weak identity. Collapses. Even in a strong environment, identity is the core. Everything else is secondary. Destiny is not fixed. It's flexible, but only to the degree that identity is flexible. If you cling to who you've been, you forfeit who you could become. Letting go of an old identity can feel like loss, but it's actually liberation. You don't need to destroy the old version of you. You thank it for getting you here, and then you move forward. Identity evolves through expansion, not rejection. You keep the strengths. You release the limits. Behavior is the language identity speaks. If you want to know who you are becoming, look at what you do when no one is watching. That's the truest signal of destiny in motion. You don't wake up one day with a great life. You build it through consistent behavior aligned with a powerful identity. That alignment removes friction. It creates flow. It turns effort into progress. When identity and behavior are aligned, destiny accelerates. You stop forcing outcomes. You start embodying them. Life stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like response. Because in the end, destiny is not something you chase. It's something you express through who you choose to be and what you repeatedly do. Design your environment to make success automatic, because willpower is not the problem. Environment is. Most people are fighting themselves every day and they don't even realize it. They wake up with good intentions and walk straight into environments that trigger distraction, procrastination, and self-sabotage. Then they blame themselves for lacking discipline. Discipline isn't broken. Design is. Your environment is constantly shaping your behavior. Not occasionally, constantly. Your brain responds faster to cues than to conscious thought. What you see, hear, touch, and repeat programs your nervous system. If your environment supports distraction, distraction becomes effortless. If it supports focus, focus becomes natural. This is why motivation fades. Motivation is an internal state. Environment is an external force. External forces win when they're designed well. You don't need to try harder. You need to make the right behavior easier than the wrong one. High performers don't rely on self-control. They rely on structure. They remove temptation instead of wrestling with it. They set up cues that trigger productive action. They don't test their discipline. They protect it. Look at your physical environment. Clutter creates cognitive noise. Noise drains focus. Focus drives performance. A chaotic space trains a chaotic mind. A clean, intentional space sends a signal of order and control to your nervous system. That signal changes how you think and act. Your digital environment matters just as much. Notifications are not harmless. They fracture attention. Fragmented attention kills momentum. Momentum is built through sustained focus, not bursts of effort. If your phone controls your attention, it controls your outcomes. Your social environment is even more powerful. The people around you normalize behavior. If mediocrity is normal, excellence feels uncomfortable. If growth is normal, progress feels expected. You rise or fall to the standard of the room you're in most often. Designing your environment is an act of leadership. It's deciding what gets access to your time, your attention, and your energy. Every yes to distraction is a no to depth. Every yes to chaos is a no to clarity. When your environment is aligned with your goals, success stops feeling like effort. It becomes the path of least resistance. The brain loves efficiency. Give it a clear, supportive structure, and it will follow it automatically. Change doesn't start with motivation. It starts with removing friction. Less friction for good habits, more friction for bad ones. That single shift changes everything. When you design your environment intentionally, you stop relying on force. You start living in flow, and when success becomes automatic, consistency becomes inevitable. Use fear as fuel, not a stop sign, because fear is not your enemy. It's your indicator. Fear doesn't show up to block your path. It shows up to mark the edge of your growth. The moment you understand that, fear loses its power to control you. Most people interpret fear as a warning. They feel it, and they stop. High performers feel it, and they lean in. Not recklessly, intentionally, because they know fear is the nervous system reacting to the unfamiliar, not predicting failure. Your brain is designed to keep you safe, not successful. It resists uncertainty, even when uncertainty leads to growth. When you step into something new, the brain flags it as a threat. That sensation you feel in your chest, your stomach, your breath, that's not danger, that's expansion. Fear becomes paralyzing only when you argue with it, when you try to eliminate it, when you tell yourself you shouldn't feel it. The moment you accept fear as part of progress, it transforms from resistance into energy. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is forward motion with fear present. Every confident person you admire learned to move while their hands were shaking. Confidence didn't come first. Action did. Fear is also data. It tells you where you care. It tells you what matters. You're not afraid of things that are meaningless to you. Fear highlights the path that leads to growth, leadership, and impact. When you use fear as fuel, you stop asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? And start asking, what is this feeling asking me to do? Usually, the answer is simple. Prepare more, focus more, commit more. Fear shrinks when you act. It grows when you hesitate. Hesitation gives fear time to build stories. Action collapses those stories. Movement tells the nervous system, we're safe enough to proceed. This is emotional mastery, not suppressing fear, but directing it. Channeling its energy into preparation, presence, and performance. Fear carries intensity. Intensity fuels excellence when aimed correctly. The people who succeed are not fearless. They're fluent in fear. They recognize it, respect it, and refuse to obey it. They let fear sharpen their focus instead of stealing their power. Every breakthrough requires stepping through fear. Not around it, not over it, through it. That's the price of expansion. Fear will never disappear before the action. It disappears because of the action. Take massive, consistent action. Not perfect action, because perfection is the most socially acceptable form of procrastination. It feels productive, it sounds responsible, and it keeps you safely stuck. Progress does not come from getting it right. It comes from getting it done and then getting it better. Most people wait. They wait to feel ready. They wait for clarity. They wait for confidence. And while they wait, opportunities pass and momentum dies. Action is the cure. Not thinking, not planning endlessly. Action. The brain does not build belief through intention. It builds belief through evidence. And evidence only comes from movement when you act even imperfectly. Your brain updates its map of what's possible. When you hesitate, it reinforces doubt. Consistency beats intensity every time. One massive push followed by burnout does nothing. Small actions repeated daily rewire your nervous system. They turn effort into identity. Identity into momentum. Momentum into results. Perfection demands certainty. Growth requires tolerance for uncertainty. If you need everything to be flawless before you move, you'll never move. Excellence is built through iteration, not hesitation. Massive action does not mean reckless action. It means committed action. It means showing up daily, executing the plan, adjusting based on feedback, and staying in motion. Movement creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. Most people stop too soon, not because it's impossible, but because it's uncomfortable. Consistent action builds emotional strength. It trains you to move forward regardless of mood. That is discipline in its highest form. You don't need more talent. You need more reps. Repetition builds mastery. Mastery builds confidence. Confidence accelerates action. The cycle feeds itself once you stay in it long enough. When you focus on consistency, failure loses its sting. Miss a step? Adjust, fall behind, continue. There is no starting over, only continuing. Massive, consistent action shifts your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You become someone who does. And that identity makes success inevitable. Because the world does not reward perfection. It rewards momentum. Condition your mind daily, or life will condition it for you. Because your mind is not neutral. It is either being trained by intention or programmed by circumstance. Every day, without exception. Something is shaping your beliefs, your focus, your emotional state, and your expectations. If you're not in control of that process, you are the product of it. Your mind learns through repetition and emotion. Whatever you focus on consistently becomes important. Whatever carries emotional weight becomes a belief. That belief then filters reality. You don't see the world as it is. You see it as you are conditioned to see it. Most people start their day in reaction, notifications, news, other people's urgency. That is not information, that is conditioning. It trains the brain to live in stress, comparison, and distraction. Over time, that becomes the default state. Not because life is overwhelming, but because the mind was never trained to lead. Mental conditioning is not positive thinking. It is directed focus. It is choosing what you feed your mind before the world feeds it for you. High performers prime their nervous system daily. They don't wait to see how they feel. They decide how they will feel and act accordingly. If you don't consciously choose your thoughts, your environment will choose them. If you don't train your emotional responses, circumstances will dictate them. That's not freedom, that's drift. Conditioning your mind means rehearsing the identity you are becoming. Visualizing not just outcomes, but behaviors. Feeling not just success, but discipline, focus, and resilience. Emotion strengthens memory. When you pair intention with emotion, the brain listens. Your internal dialogue matters. The words you repeat shape your self-image. Self-talk is not harmless commentary. It is instruction. Speak weakness long enough, and your nervous system obeys. Speak strength consistently, and your physiology responds. Mental conditioning also means managing your state. Physiology affects psychology. Your posture, breathing, and movement influence how you think and feel. Change your body and you change your mind. Life will challenge you. That's guaranteed. Conditioning prepares you to respond instead of react. It builds emotional flexibility. You stop being hijacked by temporary feelings and start acting from principle. The mind you bring into the day becomes the mind that shapes the day. Conditioning is not optional. It is happening whether you choose it or not. When you train your mind daily, clarity increases, focus sharpens, confidence stabilizes. You stop chasing certainty and start creating it. Because the strongest advantage you can have in any year is not luck or talent. It's a mind that has been deliberately trained to make 26 inevitable by acting as the person you're becoming. Because the future is not created by intention, it's created by embodiment. You don't arrive at a new life one day and then start acting differently. You act differently now, and the life follows. The fastest way to collapse time is to live today as the identity you are stepping into. Most people wait. They wait for permission. They wait for proof. They wait for confidence. But the people who win decide first and let reality catch up. They don't ask, when will I feel ready? They ask, what would the next level version of me do right now? Acting as the person you're becoming is not pretending. It's practicing. It's rehearsal with intention. Every action you take is either reinforcing the past or rehearsing the future. There is no neutral behavior. Your brain believes what you repeatedly do, not what you say, not what you think. When your behavior aligns with a higher identity, your nervous system adapts. What once felt uncomfortable becomes familiar. Familiar becomes normal. Normal becomes automatic. This is how inevitability is built. Not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through quiet consistency. You don't need to overhaul your life in a week. You need to make daily choices that are aligned with who you are becoming. Ask yourself this simple question before you act. Would the person I'm becoming do this? That question cuts through excuses. It simplifies decisions. It aligns behavior with destiny. Acting as the person you're becoming also means letting go of behaviors that no longer fit. Old habits don't disappear on their own. They must be replaced. You don't fight the old identity. You starve it by feeding the new one. This requires courage, because acting ahead of evidence feels uncomfortable. You are stepping into uncertainty, but uncertainty is where growth lives. Comfort keeps you who you've been. Discomfort transforms you into who you're meant to be. The future version of you has different standards, different boundaries, different priorities. Acting as that person means saying no to things that once felt normal. It means choosing depth over distraction, responsibility over reaction. When you act from your future identity, your environment responds. People treat you differently. Opportunities shift. Feedback changes. The world mirrors back the person you are becoming. Inevitability comes from alignment. When identity, behavior, and environment move in the same direction, results accelerate. You stop forcing outcomes. You start attracting them through consistency and clarity. You don't need to wait for 2026 to arrive. You need to arrive as the person who makes it extraordinary. This is where it becomes real. Everything you've heard is not theory. It's a blueprint for personal power. You learn that fear is not a signal to retreat. It's a signal to rise. That identity is not something you discover. It's something you condition through action. That belief doesn't come from thinking harder, but from moving forward even when certainty is missing. You saw how emotional mastery gives you control in moments when most people collapse. How massive, consistent action destroys doubt and replaces it with evidence. How conditioning your mind daily is the difference between leading your life and reacting to it. You learn that discipline is not restriction, it's freedom. That momentum beats motivation every time. That clarity follows action, not the other way around. And finally, you understood this truth deeply. Your future is not waiting for you. It is responding to you every decision you make. From this moment forward is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every action either reinforces the past or rehearses the future. There is no neutral behavior. 2026 does not become extraordinary by accident. It becomes extraordinary because you decided to raise your standards, master your state, and act as the person you're becoming, even when it feels uncomfortable. Certainty is not something you find. It's something you create by keeping your promises to yourself. You don't need a new year. You don't need perfect conditions. You need a decision so strong it reshapes your habits, a standard so clear it eliminates excuses, and an identity so powerful that quitting is no longer an option. This is the moment where clarity becomes commitment, where insight turns into action, where intention becomes inevitability. The only question left is simple. Will you leave this message inspired, or will you leave it changed? This is your moment. Don't waste it. Tony Robbins track, subscribe now. Commit your breakthrough and commit right now to the one action you're taking. Today, momentum loves speed. Take action. And I'll see you at the top.